What made you straight up, nope, out of a relationship? How about things that should have been red flags but I was too naive to recognize? Left notes on my car windshield when I was at work, a friend's house, the store, seemed sweet, but I realized later that was my so keeping tabs on me, even when I didn't say where I was. Let me know how much a hitman cost and that it was cheaper than you'd expect. Would tell me something, and then later say that was a lie or a test, as though I should have figured that out instead of expecting the truth. Ted me to answer every call, and would get angry if I wanted to end the call first. Complained about my friends and family all the time. All of them. Apparently everyone I knew was manipulative and or rude. I didn't figure out this was an attempt to isolate me until after we broke up. He had already shown very jealous tendencies and had smacked me over the head because he thought I was looking at a guy, so it wasn't good already. We were outside of his friend's house and his friend asked how I was doing and he got mad at me for answering. I just got in my car and drove away. I kept having to call the cops to calm down my wife after she became addicted to a slew of prescription drugs. I told her doctors that opiates for AA ruptured vertebrae, stimulants for ADHD, Ambien most nights to help her sleep and an assortment of others for anxiety and depression, and more to combat side effects, made her violent. One of the times that I called the cops to calm the situation down during a bad episode just made me cry. All he had to say was that he had already been there, and D asked when it would stop. I thought I'd been holding things together reasonably well. I had an office job where no one knew what was up, though my work had suffered greatly. I kept clothes and food in my trunk, just in case I had to stay out for a bit because she had decided I was part of the conspiracy. I had a gym on the way to work where I could shower or just have some downtime. I did all of our housework and errands, because she couldn't work or do much of anything most of the time. Each time she cut herself she told the hospital it was an accident, and she always tried to go to a different one. We lived in a major metro, between hospitals. The cop saw through it. Being seen like that and knowing that even that lifestyle was running out hurt. I'm now recovering from the divorce and enjoying the calm. I still sometimes panic for no reason, and I feel more comfortable with clothes and food stashed in the trunk, but I feel much healthier. I get more sleep. My blood pressure has normalized, for the most part. I don't cry at work anymore. I received a message that clearly wasn't meant for me. We just had our first date which went really well. Calling me cheap and a slimeball and how I'm on my last chance to make things right on her coming birthday with lots of presents. I replied, "Hi, this is X, we just met and had one date, was that message for someone else?" She replied pretending to be her 12-year-old sister. Then apparently her dad messaged me with how he's told off his younger daughter. I'm out. Fucked that shit, rolling on the floor laughing. Wouldn't really call it a relationship as it was only 3 dates, but I had met this girl at a wedding. She was a friend of a friend and we shared numbers that night. Texted for a while and then had a date. First date was probably a big red flag, but I shrugged it off. We had connected on Facebook and she noticed that she went to college with a girl I went to high school with. No big deal, until I found out she had been messaging that girl and asking her all these questions about me in high school. Who did I date? What car I drove, etc. Anyway, third date rolls around. I wasn't really sure how long we would be together, so typically I wouldn't have taken her to a really nice restaurant so early in a relationship, but I was in the mood for steak, so I took her to a pretty high-end steakhouse. I have never been more embarrassed by someone's behavior in public in my life, and I have a 6 and 3-year-old at home now. She sent 3 martinis back because they weren't made correctly while being extremely insulting and rude about it. She ordered a steak medium and then got pissed because she insisted she ordered it medium rare. Both the waiter and I told her she had ordered medium. She was making comments about what other women in the restaurant were wearing, and not very subtly. Then, despite me trying to get out of there without buy her dessert, she got a dessert menu and expected them to make her something that they didn't have on the menu. They had cheesecake and she wanted chocolate cheesecake. An other outburst at the staff. On the way out the door she made a point to stop and complain to someone loud enough other customers could hear. When we got into my car I was so embarrassed I pretended I had left my credit card on the table so I could go back in. I gave the waiter an extra $20 and apologized, telling him I was dumping her as soon as I got to her place. He laughed and told me he wished he could see it. I didn't really give her a chance to say much. She called me a loser and stormed off. Haven't seen or heard from her since. One day he casually told me he has a wife and 2 daughters but was unhappy and his wife never suspects anything. Stalked me for 2 months to change my mind. Crazy guy. When he didn't want to have sex because he was grossed out by my period that I had finished * 3 days prior. *. Nope, out of that one real quick. Met a girl on Tinder, we went for a coffee date. Shared some of the same music tastes. She lets me know that one of them is playing at a local club on Friday. I suggest we go together and do dinner before Friday comes. We do a late sushi dinner and head to this club around 10 for the show. Headliner, who we wanted to see, went on around midnight. Get to the club, finally get to the bar and order drinks, then head to the dance floor. She pounds the drink and says she is getting another drink. She comes back few min later with a new drink, gives me a kiss on the cheek and wanders off on the dance floor. I am not someone who is overly possessive and figure my wanting to be in the back to get a full visual and auditory experience is not her jam. All good. 20 minutes later I see her grinding on some dude. Now mentally, I am already back at my car but I want to see what happens when she makes eye contact with me. They start making out and the guy notices me eyeballing them. She wanders of F to get another drink and he comes up to me asking if I have a problem. I explain the situation and he says something to the extent of, "Sucks bro, she is with me now. Fuck off." Took his advice and did. Called up a friend and went to his house and played Catan till 2-ish. Then my phone rings. It's 230A and she is calling me asking where I went. My car was missing from the parking lot. I told her I went home and she was on her own to find a ride. I bet that guy you were making out with could give you a ride, to which she responded with, "Which one? We kissed once, made out 0 times. I laughed, hung up, and rolled for more bricks. I told her I was going to leave her, and she said, "So you're going to leave me? Just like you left your brother?" My twin brother committed suicide in 2017, and she knew how much guilt I had over not being there for him. Such a manipulative, disgusting thing for any person to say. Especially someone who claims to love you. I moved out 2 days later. He slapped me. I bounced TF out. She threatened to stab me. We were dating for a month. Genuinely feared for my safety. I went over and we got in an argument, so I slept on the floor essentially. I went to the bathroom to text one of my buddies to come pick me up since I thought she had fallen asleep. I suddenly get a text from her saying, "Where are you?" And my phone made a sound. I froze up and opened the bathroom door and she was already standing there waiting for me in the darkness. She didn't say a word at all, just stared at me until I walked by. I went back to my spot on the FLOOR and got under the blanket and pretended to be going asleep until she did. After about 30 minutes I decided to peek out from under the covers and she was literally towering over me in total darkness with her eyes wide open the entire time. I got the fuck out of there so fast. She picked me because I had the same first name, general appearance, and lived in the same area of the state as her ex-fiancé, of 2 years, that she had just been dumped by a month before we met. I felt even more offended about all of that than just being straight up rejected. Married for 6 years. Started out thinking she just struggled with depression and anxiety sometimes, but things kept escalating. I walked away when she started threatening to stab me in my sleep. We had already tried several couples therapists and individual therapists, but she refused to consider medication. I called her to meet up and try to find some closure, but she cut me off telling me I wasn't allowed to leave her and as punishment she was sleeping with 2 other guys. At that point I just ignored her number and filed for divorce. Hope she's doing well, but glad to not be afraid for my life. My brother came to visit me. After I spent whole day with my GF, it was time to see my brother because we did not see each other for a long time. We prepared some snacks and about to start LOTR because both of us love LOTR. She called me and started a long conversation on phone. I said my brother waits for me and she said that I cannot spend my time with anyone because it belongs to her. It was last talk between 2 of us. When my now ex-wife came into the living room where I was sleeping on the couch after a fight and started lunging at me. She asked me if she reminded me of my stepdad who used to come in my room at night and stand over me before he dragged me out of bed by my ankles. He would then put the boots to me for whatever sins I had committed that day. She was the only person I had ever shared this with. She went out of town for work 2 days later and when she came home I was gone and in another stat. It was remarkable the amount of abuse I put up with to that point. It dawned on me then that if he had returned to my life I wouldn't let him hurt me, so there was no reason to let her abuse me either. * Edited to add. Thank you for all the kind words and support, especially the support given to others who shared their similar stories. Peace, happiness and love to you all. I had a very long and toxic relationship with an ex. I had wanted to leave for years, but he would threaten to kill himself and I would end up staying. I finally got the courage to walk away when I was diagnosed with several benign liver tumors and was told by the doctor that it was very important with this type of tumor to immediately and permanently stop taking hormonal birth control. I researched it on my own and confirmed the single most important thing I could do to avoid further complications was to stop taking hormonal birth control for good. I told my then husband about the appointment and he said, so calmly, well, that's going to be a problem. I was like, what do you mean? I'll go to the gyno as soon as I can get an appointment and we can just use condoms until then. Nope. Condoms were unacceptable because we were married. And not having sex until I got to the gyno was also unacceptable. What really made my blood run cold though, was when he suggested that I should continue to take birth control as normal and just not tell the doctor. He'll never know, he said. Then he went on to suggest maybe I could go on and off birth control so I'd be off of it before any follow-up appointments with this doctor, to ensure that he'd never know. I was totally stunned and I just looked at him and said, you understand this could kill me? This isn't about placating a doctor, this is about my life. He just shrugged and said he wasn't using condoms and I needed to figure it out. I did figure it out. I left him more than a decade ago and have never been happier. He wanted me to grow out my pit and leg hair and texted, called, and emailed me repeatedly about it. It seemed like a pretty silly thing and he just had a little fetish, but after several days of this my sister said, why do you always attract the controlling freaks? And I finally had a moment of clarity. It was already on the rocks from roughly around the time the millionth drunken argument happened. However, the moment that sealed it was when she said something to me along the lines of, if your dad wanted to be alive he would still be here. My dad died in a car accident 3 years before that. Immediately went from loving her enough to make it work to thinking she was the most vile person on earth. We had been together for quite a while, 6 to 8 months, and lived together for at least 2 months when I decided to make tuna salad. I asked how he liked it. He told me. I came back with 2 bowls, half the can made his way, and half the can made the way I liked it. He completely freaked out. He said, if we can't agree on how to eat tuna, how will this ever work? I said that we don't have to agree. We can both have it exactly the way we want and be happy. He vehemently disagreed. I started thinking of all of his other controlling behavior and inability to compromise. It wasn't that day that we broke up, but it was definitely the day our relationship broke. The cheating didn't help either.